this is Angelus de Mortiel with another multiplayer build guide for Dragon Age Inquisition. Today we will be building the Saarebas as a strike leader. A striker is a role focused on mobility and single target burst DPS. A leader is any class that has skills for buffing allies and debuffing enemies. The Saarebas has a unique mechanic where she does not expend mana to cast spells. Instead, mana is replaced with a combo stage system. There is 3 stages in this system: opening, flow, and finishing. Opening will see the spell act in its first capacity, often the weakest and least utility of the spell. Flow sees a spell act in its second capacity, is the fastest to cast, and often has the most synergy. Finishing sees the spell act in its third capacity, is by far the slowest to cast, and often the most powerful variant of that spell. Each spell has 3 variations, usually attuned to fire, ice, or electric, that have varying degrees of different effects. This essentially gives the Saarebas the use of 12 different abilities, 3 variations of 4 spells. While this video will be a bit more intensive, I'll outline briefly the 3 stages of each ability and the passives as usual. The strategy, we will discuss the abilities used in combination and the synergy attained from that. First, we have Hissera's Leap, a multi-function mobility skill. In the opening stage, this deals 300% cold damage to enemies and functions much like Fade Step with the Frost Step upgrade. You can control movement to a degree until you stop. However, it does not chill enemies like Frost Step. The flow stage sees the Saarebas jump straight backwards a few meters and quickly leaves a trail of electricity that deals 300% electric damage to enemies that are pursuing you. It is similar to the move you have likely seen performed by Venatori mages. The finisher stage sees the Saarebas teleport to an enemy and come crashing down on its head, dealing 300% fire damage to both the enemies standing where you were and to the enemy you leapt to. It is almost identical to the move performed by the Qunari Saarebases you will face, albeit theirs does spirit damage. The upgrade, Leap of Freedom, purges any status effects. This includes the fear effect from the Demon Commander, but not some physical knockdowns, so you will not want to rely on it as much as moves like Combat Roll. Next, we have Glyphs of Akun. In the opening stage, this grants a frost glyph that gives you a 25% damage resistance and chills enemies that strike you. The flow stage grants you a lightning glyph that gives you a 25% movement speed bonus and allows you to dodge an attack every 10 seconds. That latter effect acts like a single elusive stack on the duelist. The finisher stage grants you a 25% damage bonus and damages enemies that hit you with 50% fire damage for a few seconds. The upgrade, Glyphs of Iskun, also grants the glyph you cast to your nearest ally. You can apply different glyphs to each teammate and yourself. After that, we have Bakun Barrage. Yes, if you say it fast, it sounds like bacon, making this the most delicious spell in the game, unless you're a vegan. The opener stage launches 12 ice projectiles that deal 150% ice damage and inflict chilled. The flow stage launches 6 fire projectiles that deal 150% fire damage and inflict burning. The finisher stage launches a ridiculous 16 electric projectiles that deal 150% electric damage and inflict shocked. These function like elemental barrage on other mages, except the element is not tied to the staff you have equipped. The upgrade, Wild Barrage, doubles the damage on the projectiles, but they will no longer home in on a single target. This makes it easier to deal with groups, but it also makes it much easier to draw unwanted aggro. Use with caution. Finally, we have Gottlock Blast. In the opening stage, you hurl one stone directly at an enemy that deals 400% cold damage and can knock down weak enemies. In the flow stage, you hurl two stones directly at the enemy that deal 400% electric damage each. The first stone will paralyze the target, and the second will detonate a discharge combo if it connects with that paralyzed target. In the finishing stage, you drop 3 stones on the enemy's head, dealing 400% fire damage each. Great against shield-bearing foes. The upgrade, Staggering Blast, makes the flow stance variation an impact detonator. While the second stone of this will act in that capacity anyway with respect to discharging the first stone's paralysis, this widens the utility and makes the first stone able to also act as a detonator as well. Now, let's briefly cover the passives. Although you will get it no matter what, Static Charge is an important note for that upgrade to Gottlock Blast that I just mentioned, because it will paralyze enemies that strike you while you're casting, meaning you can potentially deal 2 discharge combos to an enemy in rapid succession, albeit it's very rare. The paralysis is useful nonetheless. With Strength, Endurance gives you a 20% damage reduction while casting spells. Elemental Attunement gives you a 25% duration bonus to burning, chilled, and shocked status effects. Elemental Fury gives a 25% damage bonus to burning, chilled, and shocked enemies. In Knowledge, Power effectively doubles the base damage of spells with the same element as your equipped staff. This stacks additively with other bonus damage. Guard Smasher effectively doubles the base damage of attacks against guard. This also stacks additively with other bonus damage when the target has active guard. What is and is not effectively doubles the base damage of attacks against barrier. This also stacks additively with other bonus damage when the target has a barrier. Note, those 2 passives cannot happen at the same time, it's either one or the other. In Ignorance, Weakness grants you immunity to being interrupted when casting spells in the finishing stage, which is the slowest to cast. From Power, Mastery causes any enemy you kill to explode and deal 400% spirit damage to enemies within a small radius. Before we get into strategy, let's cover a few points about how these spells work. Firstly, Glyphs of Akun will last until you change the glyph or die. You can apply one glyph and conceivably have it last the entire match. This also applies to teammates that have a glyph applied as well. You can also apply different glyphs to each of your teammates, as it will only apply the current glyph to the closest teammate, which seems to also have a maximum range, as I was able to have a different glyph on myself than any of my teammates. Secondly, the way the passives work grants you a 2x damage bonus to elements of your staff element type, 3x damage bonus to said match element against enemies with guard or barrier, and 4x damage bonus to Bakun Barrage with its upgrade and said match element against said guard or barrier. This also stacks with the packed belts that you may get in random drops from chests. Lastly, with the Frost Glyph of Akun active, you have a 55% damage reduction while casting spells, and cannot be interrupted in the painfully long casting animation of the finishing stage. Conversely, the Electric Glyph of Akun seems to speed up the casting animations, despite the description stating movement speed and not attack speed. So the strategy follows a simple concept. Boost your teammates, then spread the pain. Glyphs of Akun is amazingly useful for boosting your team, as it does not wear off as long as they do not die, so you can apply the glyphs before even entering the first zone. Use frost glyphs on tanks to boost their survivability and give them a little passive crowd control. Lightning glyphs on less durable strikers to make them move faster and dodge occasional attacks. And fire glyphs on your heavy hitters that have alternative ways to survive. Next, covering standard engagements. Use Hissera's Leap as the opening to close the gap, Gotluck Blast as the flow on an enemy in the middle of a group to paralyze and detonate them, knocking down nearby enemies, and Bakun Barrage as the finishing to fire a volley of hard-hitting electric bolts. This combo sees the best damage when using an electric staff, such as the Staff of the Void I'm using in this video, as 2/3 of the combo is electric based. For less standard engagements, such as enemies immune to electric or paralysis, things can open up to more choices, such as Hissera's Leap, Bakun Barrage as the opening, ice damage, Bakun Barrage as the flow, fire damage, and Hissera's Leap / Gotluck Blast as the finishing for fire damage. Those latter two finishing moves are extremely useful against shield bearing enemies, as they are guaranteed damage that cannot be blocked by a shield. There are also some other fun combinations of those abilities I found in playing, but I'll let you experiment and find those yourself. Be mindful of your surroundings and your team. Do not hesitate to use Hissera's Leap at any time to escape a bad situation. As a striker with both very good AoE and single target damage capabilities, do not hesitate to switch between applying group damage to focusing on a single tougher enemy as the situation dictates. The Saarebas is one of the most versatile classes in Inquisition Multiplayer, able to switch between leader, striker, and controller roles with ease. While I chose to focus on the former two roles, the combinations are still astounding. After playing some 10 odd combinations of her abilities, I can honestly say that not one of them felt like they would not be viable and fun. This build I settled on added a mixture of damage, mobility, and fire and forget team buffs that was both a joy to play and had an easy barrier to entry while having a decently high skill ceiling. Something for everyone to enjoy. As I always say, this is not the best build for the Saarebas. There are no best builds. Have another way to build the Saarebas? Let me know in the comments below. Once again, this is Angelus de Mortiel, signing off.